genre.
Welcome to The Doctor's Companion presents Doctor Who The Long Way Round, the weekly podcast where we review, discuss, and recap every episode of Doctor Who one doctor at a time. I'm Cassandra Fredrickson.
I'm Nick Jimenez.
And I'm Scott Corelli.
Today on the show we'll be discussing Doctor Who the movie, the 8th Doctor's first and, unfortunately, only on-screen story.
Yes.
Technically. We technically have Night of the Doctor, whatever you want to call that, you know?
Yeah. That's true.
It's more of a trip than an adventure.
A real short trip. A real short trip off of or a long trip off a short pier. Yeah.
Physician, heal thyself.
So I have a ton of background information, and this is a hell of a story. So I want to get through this because this is kind of amazing. And there's some stuff that I didn't know about that I don't know if you knew about this or not, but I'm excited to get to it because it's really interesting. So it all started
on Skara.
It all started with Star Trek: The Next Generation. Star Trek: The Next Generation hit the air in 1987 and was a pretty big hit for a show that premiered in syndication. And it did things on a technical level and did things with science fiction that was really impressing the BBC. And then they'd be like, oh man, look at what the Americans are doing with Star Trek. And then they'd go and they'd look at Doctor Who and they'd be like, Jesus, what are we doing? So right off the bat, around when Star Trek: The Next Generation started taking off, which was about 88 or so, the BBC looked at Doctor Who and was just like, okay, we need to be done with this. Unless somehow you guys can reinvent the show and make it, more of the quality of Star Trek: The Next Generation, there's no reason to continue doing this. None of us even like this show because, everyone working here is kind of from a generation before Doctor Who was a thing. So none of us care. Like, all of us were too old when it started and none of us care now. So if it's not getting ratings, we don't care. We don't want the show. And John Nathan Turner, who for a long time was desperate to keep the show on the air, had now been working on the show for 10 years and only had wanted to work on the show for 5 of those. But the problem was that the BBC wanted to reinvent the show. No one had any ideas of how to reinvent the show. And John Nathan Turner didn't know how to reinvent the show that he was already producing. So the BBC just canceled Doctor Who in 1989. And then this guy named Philip Siegel, who was born in England and was raised on Doctor Who moved to America and found out that the BBC had canceled Doctor Who and realized that now was his chance to bring Doctor Who to America. So this Philip Siegel guy he's working for I think he's working for not Paramount. I forget where he's working for TV development somewhere. But it's not important. But he's working for somewhere for TV development. And he gets in touch with the BBC and he says, I want Doctor Who. And they're like, why? And he's just like, well, I really love Doctor Who. Like, I was raised on it, blah, blah, blah. And they're just like, okay, maybe. And then at the same time, this other company, this movie company called Coast to Coast, they came on board. They heard about what Philip Siegel was doing. And so Coast to Coast was like, hey, if you don't sell Doctor Who to that guy to make a TV show, we'll make a Doctor Who movie and we'll pay you £750,000 for the rights. They were like, oh, you want to make a Doctor Who movie? Oh, that's so glamorous. Like, you're America. And like, oh yeah, definitely. Let's do that.
Can Eric Roberts be in it?
Deal. So they took that deal. No, we're not anywhere near the Eric Roberts part of this story. This is still like 1990. And then Peter Siegel, or Philip Siegel, sorry. Philip Siegel gets a job with Amblin Entertainment. And while working at Amblin Entertainment, he is following very closely what Coast to Coast is doing with Doctor Who. So at this point, they are gearing up to make this Doctor Who movie. And they have one of those deals where, like the Roger Corman Fantastic Four deal, they have to make a movie or they're going to lose the rights. Okay? So they decide, all right, let's make a movie. All right? We're going to somebody write a script. Doesn't matter what it is. Write a script. Donald Sutherland is going to play the Doctor. And the movie is going to be directed by Leonard Nimoy.
What?
Yes.
Wait, the guy that directed 3 Men and a Baby?
Yes. and directed, like 2 Star Trek movies.
Oh.
Yeah. So Leonard Nimoy was going to direct a Doctor Who movie starring Donald Sutherland as the Doctor. And that's what was going to happen. So Siegel finds out about this. And he goes and has a lunch meeting with Leonard Nimoy. And he goes, Leonard, the only reason Coast to Coast is making this movie is so they can keep the rights. They're trying to trick you into making a garbage movie. And Leonard Nimoy was like, really? And so he quit. And so the rights to Doctor Who reverted back to the BBC. And then Philip Siegel just slid right in and was like, hey, remember how I wanted to make a series before? Well, now I work for Amblin, which, if you remember, is Steven Spielberg's company. And so now the BBC are like, oh my God, Steven Spielberg wants to make a Doctor Who movie? This is going to be amazing. So they give him the rights after this whole thing where he meets with some BBC execs at a Sequest. What is that? What was that show called? Sequest.
Yeah.
It was like DSV. Yeah. Sequest DSV. They go on a tour of the set and he's like, oh, I'll do this tour personally. And then he basically corners them and says, give me Doctor Who. And like, give me Doctor Who, we'll make a show and we'll make it with Steven Spielberg and everyone will watch it and everyone will love it. And I will get to make a Doctor Who thing. And they're just like, Jesus, man. Okay, fine. So they give him the rights to Doctor Who. And at the same time, this is now 1993. So Steven Spielberg has just come off of Jurassic Park. So he's about as big as he's ever been, right?
Which is saying something.
Right. And he's making like all of these TV series. He's got Tiny Toons and Animaniacs. He's got cartoons. He's got TV series like Sequest. He's got all of these things that he's doing. And so they're like really excited about doing this series. However, this other thing happens where it's now the 30th anniversary because it's 1993. And the BBC is like, well, it would be cool to do this thing with you, but it's not coming together as quickly as we want because we want a series, not a movie now. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a 30th anniversary special. It's going to be called Lost in the Dark Dimension. And it's going to star Tom Baker as the main Doctor and co-star all of the other Doctors. So Siegel finds out about this and he's like, ooh, really? Because they want to make a 30th anniversary special to revive sales of the VHS copies of the show. Remind everybody that Doctor Who is a thing that people love and they should go buy VHS copies of all the episodes. So they send Siegel the script for Dark Dimension. And he reads the script and then sends them a cease and desist letter. Because he says the script sucked so much that there is no way. He called it an embarrassment. He was like, it's embarrassing. Like, it's worse than the show had ever been. And it was obviously a cash grab that they just wanted to sell, their back catalog. So he sent them a cease and desist letter because he was like, look, we had a deal. You can't go make a Doctor Who story without me, and I'm not making this. So instead of doing that for the 30th anniversary, they did a Children's in Need, 15-minute special, and did that. And that was fine because it wasn't like an actual Doctor Who special. So then Siegel, there's some problems with the rights and stuff and how they're going to work out a deal between the BBC and Universal, who owns Amblin. So he starts hounding Universal every day, and he's calling them every day. And he's like, have you made the Doctor Who deal yet? And they're like, no, I told you yesterday and the day before that, this deal isn't happening because we can't come to an agreement on how we're going to split our costs. And he's like, okay, but seriously, have you made a deal yet? And so he would just keep nagging them and nagging them and nagging them. And eventually Amblin and BBC finally came to an agreement on a 50-50 co-production of a series, but it had to be a series. No, there was no question. It absolutely had to be a series without a doubt. No movies, no anything else. It had to be an ongoing. They had to be greenlit basically directly to series. So they start making a series Bible while also experimenting with special effects. And they start making CGI. They start updating the Daleks to be CGI transforming spider Daleks. And you can find that footage all over YouTube and everything. It's insane. It's insane. It was literally, it'd be like a Dalek, and then it would open up and turn into a big spider. Yeah. So then the series Bible, which was written by Leakley, along with the pilot script, which was going to be a 2-hour pilot, was written by John Leakley. And he created this thing where it was going to be a reboot of the series from the beginning. And this is the thing that's really interesting. So the pilot was going to feature a half-human doctor seeking his father named Ulysses through various time periods, including contemporary Gallifrey, where a character named Barusa. Do you know who Barusa is? Barusa, I guess he's one of the presidents of the Time Lords, maybe.
He's one of the characters that shows up starting in Deadly Assassin. He's the mentor character on Gallifrey.
Okay, so Barusa was going to die at the beginning of the pilot, and his spirit was going to be merged with a TARDIS, because in this reboot, TARDISes are what happens to Time Lords when they die.
Weird.
And then the Master was going to become leader of the Time Lords. So president of the Time Lords. Which is
Master?
Which I don't have. Well, I imagine that's President Time Lord is what it is in the classic Who and everything. I imagine he would just be called Master of the Time Lords or something. It was probably a weird backwards way of them explaining why he's named the Master. Is by he's called the Master because he's Master of the Time Lords. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the Master becomes leader of the Time Lords. And then as the Doctor in the pilot travels through time and space, searching for his father named Ulysses, who's missing, and I think is supposed to be the rightful leader of the Time Lords. So Barusa was friends with his father. His father's missing. Barusa dies, becomes a TARDIS. The Doctor travels with Barusa the TARDIS to go find his father so that his father can become the rightful leader of the Time Lords. That's what the plot is. And the Doctor travels through the Blitz and then ancient Egypt, and then he goes to Skaro, where the Daleks are actually being created, and so there's a genesis of the Daleks thing. So all of this happens in the pilot. And then attached to the pilot was a Bible that included other ideas for episodes, including remakes of episodes that we know and love. For example, so the first story that was in it, and I'm just going to go through all of the stories that they came up with, is the Pirates, which was going to be the Doctor teaming up with Blackbeard. Then the Talons of Wang Chiang, which was going to be set in New York in this version.
No.
Yes. And then Earthshock, which was going to be, which was going to be featuring the villains, the Sibs, they were going to take the Cybermen and change them into like cyberpunk kind of characters. And the reason for this reinvention, at first I was like really upset because I was just like, what? Like, just call them Cybermen. Who cares? And then they mentioned that the reason that they had to change them was because of the Borg. So because of the Borg, they couldn't just be Cybermen, because then everyone would cry foul that they were just ripping off the Borg, when in reality, Star Trek ripped off the Cybermen.
Yeah.
Kind of the John Carter of Mars and everything else paradox.
Right, exactly, totally. So then they were going to do Horror of Fang Rock, and then they were going to do the Celestial Toymaker, but in this version, the Toymaker was going to be under the control of the Master, who was going to be like the season-long like big bad, right?
Right.
And then an episode called Don't Shoot, I'm the Doctor, which was called a more historically accurate remake of the Gunfighters, which makes me laugh.
Man.
And then an episode called Tomb of the Sibs, in which the Sibs are awoken by the Master. And then The Yeti, which was a remake of the Abominable Snowmen. And was going to feature the Dalai Lama and Sir Edmund Hillary.
What?
Yeah. And then The Ark in Space. And then another episode just called The Sibs. You can tell that even though they're having to change the Cybermen because of the Borg, that doesn't mean that they're not going to try and cash in.
Yeah.
So there's another episode called The Sibs, which was a story set on Mars, in which the Doctor escapes capture by hiding in a gold mine. A gold mine on Mars. I'm pretty sure that's not how that works, but okay. A remake of The Sea Devil set in a Louisiana oil rig.
What?
An episode called The Outcasts, in which the Sibs would attack Gallifreyan outcasts. An episode called The Land of Fear, which was going to be a combination of The Reign of Terror and The Claws of Access.
That seems like such a weird combination.
I know, it's super weird. I don't know how that works. All I can tell you is what it's saying on the thing I'm reading.
Yeah.
And then this one, I was like, oh, this one makes me pumped. A remake of The Demons set in Salem, Massachusetts.
Okay, that is awesome.
Yeah. So cool. And then they were going to do a completed version of Shada, the long-lost Douglas Adams story, which would have introduced Romana and Professor Chronitis as Romana's uncle. Yep. So that was the Bible for the original 1990s reboot, the one that was going to be done by Amblin and Universal Television, 50-50 production split with BBC. And then here's what happened. Steven Spielberg got the script for the pilot, and he read it, and he said, this is just Indiana Jones in a blue box. I'm not making this because I've already done Indiana Jones, and I'm not going to water down my brand by making this thing that isn't really it's too close to my brand, is like basically what he was saying. Is like this version of it is this action like adventure, like, you know, strapping young, like, you know, adventurer guy. It's very swashbuckling, this version of Doctor Who. And so he was like, I don't want to make this. But unfortunately, because he said that he didn't want to make it, that meant that Amblin didn't want to make it, which meant that Universal didn't want to make it, which meant that Philip Siegel couldn't make it and couldn't take it anywhere else because it was made in-house at Amblin, so therefore Amblin owned it. So nothing could be done about this version. And honestly, and this version, as they were making it, they were already casting, and they had already cast Paul McGann at this point. So Paul McGann was going to be this version of the Doctor at this point. I believe this was at this point around late 93, early 94, something like that. Then they give it to this other guy, who I can't remember what his name is, but he wrote a script that was sort of a rewrite of the Leakley script, as close enough to being the Leakley script, without by at the same time like changing enough things to be like legally sound. Mm-hmm. And so the things that he changed, like in this other version, in the Leakley version, you know, they're in the Blitz and they meet Winston Churchill. And then in this version, the Doctor has a companion named Lizzie and she has a dog named Winston.
Aww.
a pet bulldog named Winston. So things like that. So they did that script. And then this time Philip Siegel didn't like this script. So then they get the guy that actually wrote the story, and his pitch was, if you want to make a Doctor Who movie for American audiences, then there's only one question that this entire thing should be focused around, which is Doctor, who am I? And so they were like, that's a great pitch. Go write that script. So he did, and everything was going swimmingly until they got to the third act, in which everyone had different notes for how the story should end. And he, by his own admission, was like, look, I was just doing my job. We tried our best. This ending is really not, it all falls apart. I know it falls apart. I think everyone knows it falls apart, but everyone thought they were right and no one would back down. So I had to do everyone's ideas. And then you end up with what we ended up with. He's like, it was a mess. It was a mess. He's like, but I'm really proud of how the Doctor turned out. And I'm really proud of the first like 2/3 of the movie. And so they did that. And then Fox heard the pitch, and the guy who was in charge of the TV movies at Fox was a huge Doctor Who fan and greenlit it without even having the script ready, and was like, okay, great. We go into production like in December, make it happen. So they get it all done. And then the thing that happens in the movie is that, you know, they made the decision to make it a continuation of the old series instead of being a reboot. And by doing that, they wrote McCoy into the script as the Seventh Doctor. The BBC get the script back and they're like, we like all of it except for everything with McCoy in it because McCoy is terrible. We canceled the show when he was the Doctor. We canceled the show when he was the Doctor. No one wants to be reminded of that terrible version of the show. Get him out of this. And so they were very adamant about keeping him in it. And at first, the way that the story started was actually the Doctor didn't regenerate until halfway through the story. And in fact, McCoy was the Doctor for halfway through the story. And so like there was this big change halfway through where you have this mysterious guy that no one knows who he is, and then he dies and then regenerates, and then even he doesn't know who he is. Right? And so that was the original story of this pilot, of this TV movie. And basically BBC was like, okay, we will agree for McCoy to be in it, but he can't have any dialogue.
That's so sad.
So they cut all of his dialogue and made it so that the second that he walks out of the TARDIS, he gets shot and killed. before he can really say anything. So he only ends up getting, I think, one line of dialogue, which is like the whatever he's whispering to Grace in the operating table.
He says some stuff to the Asian kid.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right too. But yeah, he only gets like vague whispers or whatever, and that's it. So that was the agreement. And then the other thing was that Fox had to put a mention in the contract that if the TV movie did well, it could work as a backdoor pilot into a new series. And they agreed to that. Unfortunately, after they finished it, they aired it on May 14th, 1996. And it aired against the Roseanne series finale. So it got screwed at the time. And you have to keep in mind that this is 1996. So these numbers sound amazing now, but in 1996, they were kind of garbage numbers. It only got, I think, 6.2 million viewers, which was, minuscule, because shows that were moderate hits got like 10 million views. And this only got 6. So it didn't work out. And the show didn't get picked up. And then the saddest part is that 2 weeks later, it aired on the BBC in England, and it did gangbusters. It pulled like really high numbers,
like 10 people,
right? Which in England is a lot. So that's not true, and I'm sorry to all of our English listeners. But yeah, no, it got a lot. It played like gangbusters, and people really liked it. As silly as it was, because they remember Doctor Who being silly, so they didn't mind all the silliness, and BBC was fully prepared to do a series, but Fox wasn't, and the agreement was that it was going to be a 50-50 production split because they couldn't afford a show as expensive as Doctor Who on their own at the time. So there you go. So that's the history of what brought us to the TV movie. I would love to go visit the alternate universe and see the Leakley version of the show, just because it sounds fascinating. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone in that.
But I don't know. Some of it is cool, but most of it is like, bleh. Like,
yeah. No, I mean, I don't want it to exist in our world. I want to visit the alternate universe where it exists,
yeah.
Where I can watch it like a scientist and be like, oh, okay,
notes, clipboard.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Push my glasses up my nose.
Yeah,
yeah.
In this universe, Barry's the Flash.
Right. So that's the background of how we got to this joyous occasion, which is Doctor Who the movie, and I'm excited to talk about it.
All right. So, my friends, it was on the planet Skaro that my old enemy, the Master, was finally put on trial. Can we talk about this?
Line in cinematic history. It's the greatest opening line in cinematic history. It is the most. It's the line every time the writer in the thing I was watching would say, "I'm really proud of the first 2/3, especially the opening," and I'm just like, "What were you watching?" Because
right?
The version I watched opened with, "It was on the planet Skaro where my old enemy, the Master, was put on trial."
Man.
Like that in one line you set up Skaro, the Daleks, the Master, and whoever the guy talking is. Like that's so much exposition in one sentence. It's insane. Oh man,
I'm imagining. I'm imagining like in 1995, like in living rooms across the country, like patient girlfriends and like their nerdy boyfriends like watching TV on a Thursday night, and then
I was there watching this,
and then
when
like
it aired.
It began on the planet Skaro
because it came out the weekend of my birthday.
Oh.
So me and my dad just like were like hanging out on a Saturday night, and he was like, "Oh my god, they made a new Doctor Who thing. We're gonna watch it." And I just remember seeing his face just slowly.
Oh,
but you know, anyway. But yeah. So I was there. So yeah. That first line. What were you gonna say, Nick?
Oh no, I was just gonna say I'm like imagining like girlfriends watching it with like their boyfriends just after that first line, slowly turning to look at like their boyfriend.
Like, oh
Are
god,
you kidding?
like what is happening?
That's
what is this?
like I know it's not possible for like sentences to be virgins, but
Oh man.
It reminds me of like the kind of exposition that like Zordon gives in an episode of Power Rangers.
yeah.
Like,
Zordon, what's wrong? You look sad. It began on the planet Skaro, and my old master, the Oh, okay.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out that the writer of this wrote the Power Rangers movie. To be totally, I think they came out the same year.
Huh.
Whoa, that's weird. Yeah, the Power Ranger movie was like 95, so yeah.
Yeah, about the same year. Really close anyway.
Man,
yeah, that's...
It's crazy that I had zero knowledge of this, because I was, you know, a human.
Yeah.
Like, I remember being excited about the Power Rangers movie, you know what I mean? Like, I remember being aware of that.
Yeah.
So it's weird that this wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
My radar being, like, my friends. Like, I didn't have, like, the internet, but...
Right. I mean, I don't know why this would be on your radar, honestly.
Yeah.
You were probably watching the series finale of Roseanne, let's be honest.
Yeah, with the rest of my family.
Right.
It ain't here.
I was the one with the nerdy dad that was like, we're going to watch Doctor Who.
Yeah. So, like, on Monday morning, everyone was like, yeah, John Goodman was dead for, like, 4 seasons. And your dad was like, did you guys watch that Doctor Who TV movie? And they're like, Corelli, go jump off.
What was ultra sad about it is that I remember that when we sat down to watch it, because it was the first Doctor Who thing that he ever had me watch. And I remember we were watching it, and like right before we watched it, he's like, you know, when you were a kid and they were playing, you know, Doctor Who on PBS and everything, I taped every episode. So I have every episode on VHS. And when you love this, we can go and we can watch all of those.
Aww.
And I was really excited. And I see, here's the thing. When I was 11, when I was watching this, I loved this. Like, I thought it was great. Mm-hmm. And it began like this like hard coded thing in my DNA with Doctor Who, like the magic of Doctor Who began with this TV movie. So I have a soft spot for it. It
all began.
Yeah, it all Paul began. And yeah, so I have a soft spot for this because, you know, I'm 11 years old and there's like, you know, this crazy box where somebody drives a motorcycle in and out of. Like, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
and like
Heartthrob Eric Roberts was in it.
Yeah, and this guy, this one guy turns into another guy. Like everything about it was so weird and magical, and I'd never ever seen anything like it before.
San Francisco.
Yeah. So from a certain perspective, I think it worked like gangbusters. I mean, obviously for some audiences. So
yeah,
I don't know. Anyway, continue so all of that discussion brings us back to our first line.
So
strap in, everybody.
After this wonderful case study of how not to write the opening line to a movie, so I guess the master, as his last...
I'm sorry. I'm still laughing about that opening line. And I'm just thinking, like I just want... Like, I want to write other opening lines to movies that are like that. Like, like really awkward opening lines. You know, like...
The Island of Amity.
It was on the island of Amity where the
My old friend Bruce the Shark was put on trial for his crimes. You're dead, Quint. You're dead. It's like, it's like the shark gets like sent to the Phantom Zone. It's like put in like that weird like triangle thing.
Oh my god.
Space Jaws.
Yeah, Space Jaws.
Oh man. So I guess as his last request, the master, he wants the doctor to take his like ashes or whatever back to Gallifrey.
His remains.
Yeah.
His goopy slug remains.
Just why are the Daleks putting the master on trial? Like it's like
where's that
someone
scene?
Yeah.
Oh
it's
man,
like someone had like a grid and then just had like 4 darts and was just like, okay, so what's this? Oh, the master. And who's he going to be on? Oh, the Daleks. Awesome. And where's it? Skaro. Cool. Go.
I just imagine the writer writing that line and then just sitting back in his chair, looking at it, and then just going, game on. And then just starting to write.
He cracks his knuckles.
Yeah.
It's like a montage of him just writing furiously into the night. Oh,
to the theme song of Murder, She Wrote. Yeah.
I finally meet the bright guy, and he's an alien.
Oh God, it's so beautiful.
So yeah, the doctor is a glorified hearse, and he's taking the master's stuff back to Gallifrey. And we get some lovely like Dalek voices, but it's like the, I don't know, like the cheap store brand knockoff Dalek voice. Like they sound like they took heat, like they like sucked a balloon. It's like a bunch of chipmunks just saying "exterminate," like
yeah,
which I love. Like, was that?
I'm imagining
be
at the trial all of the Daleks wearing like Parliament wigs.
Oh my God, you guys! Matthew Jacobs, the writer of this, after he wrote this, he wrote The Emperor's New Groove.
Wow! What? Shut up!
Yeah. He wrote The Emperor's New Groove.
Oh my God!
It was in the country of Peru where the Emperor peace.
I'm not kidding. If I watched that and it opened with a line like that, it would be the most magical thing that's ever happened.
Holy moly! I cannot believe that, because Emperor's New Groove is like amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
He also wrote the movie Lassie. like the Lassie movie.
Yeah.
And his father was an actor in The Gunfighters and brought him to set as a child.
Whoa, cool.
Yeah.
It was on the set of The Gunfighters that
Oh wow. Okay. Anyway, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is gonna be a long episode. So we have the TARDIS flying through space, and we get this new theme that I really love. It's kind of like orchestral, and there's all these credits. And we see the 7th Doctor just chilling out in his TARDIS, which looks like a mix between like a Batcave and a Roman Gothic cathedral.
So cool. Honestly, I think my favorite TARDIS.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's my favorite TARDIS interior because I think that it pays off on the promise of what the TARDIS is, which is bigger on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a castle on the inside.
Yeah.
And there's something really like romantic and cool about this. And also, you know, there's also the fact that this was the first TARDIS interior I ever saw. So
that's true.
There's that too. But yeah, I love this TARDIS interior. I think it would be really cool if they did something this massive again at some point.
Yeah.
He's got a
I
little
like
library
it.
sitting area. And...
Right. I like it, but it's not like my favorite. I think it's almost too big, but that's just me. So we get a bunch of like really, really, really on the nose imagery, like clocks.
Isn't he watching, or he's reading the Time Machine?
Yeah,
right?
he's reading the Time Machine. He's listening to this
what do you
song.
Think? What do you think of the TARDIS?
I like that it's like a bachelor pad. It's very comfortable.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. I've always wanted to see a TARDIS with brick on the interior too, because I've always thought that would be like weird and like cool to like just like, whoa, that's different. Like I've never seen brick on the inside before. I don't know.
Huh.
Anyway, sorry. Continue.
So before hanging out in his like sitting area, he puts this box, which presumably has the master's remains in it, into another box, and then he locks that box. So we look at the box again after all of these ticking clocks and whatever, and the box starts wiggling, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And it wiggles so aggressively that his tea goes flying. Like he has a cup of tea and it just goes flying. And
wiggles aggressively.
The record player that he's listening to, like the arm with the needle on it just like snaps off, and I'm just like, what is happening? And this,
what song is he listening to? It's something time related to, right?
Yeah, because it gets stuck on the word time just to drive it home. And the gooey, the ultimate gooey master, like
Snot Master.
Yeah, Snot
Master.
It's
Eric Roberts is Snot Master.
Oh my god! So it slides out of the box and into the console, which the console breaks, and it freaks out, and it's like emergency landing, and McCoy's like, oh, that's not good. So he like goes to where the box was, and it's just like, oh, all this goo, and then we have the first in a series of like really, really awkward transitions, because there's like a shot of him looking at the box, and then all of a sudden there's like a fish head, and like a giant cleaver cuts off the head of a fish, and so we find ourselves in San Francisco, 1999, in Chinatown, presumably.
God, guys, do you guys remember in 1999 all of those stories about those Asian street gangs in San Francisco?
Of course.
I know, right?
So many Asian street gangs. Nick's exhausted just thinking about it. There's so many of them.
So there's
Club.
So we're in Chinatown, and there's these three guys. They like run across the street. They're running away from a car. They hop a fence and just pull out guns casually and shoot at this car. The car drives off, and they high five, and one of them does like a spin kick into a high five, and it's pretty cool. And they're
pretty cool.
Yeah. It's like the coolest thing I've ever seen. And they're congratulating themselves at, shooting at a car, and they're in like this alley. They're in this alley, and a bunch of other Asian gangsters just pop out from behind boxes. And yeah, this is a thing that happened. So they're like, uh-oh, and
Hey, because Cass, remember when I said they were going to remake Talons of Wang Chai?
Oh my god.
I'm sorry.
It's like Gangs of New York, but like Asian? How does that even...
I don't know.
Oh my god.
Oh, God. All right.
So these rival gangsters, they have like submachine guns, so they just like start shooting at our like trio of dudes. And two of the guys go down like really, really quick. And then one guy is like trying to crawl behind boxes, and they see him, and then like he puts his hands up like it's to surrender up against this wall, and one of the guys is just like, "Oh, say your prayers, Lee." So I guess this guy's name is Lee, because he's Asian. His name is Lee, and they're about to shoot him, and the TARDIS shows up in front of him. So they're like, "Oh, this is weird. Well, let's shoot at it." So they shoot at the TARDIS, and they stop, and McCoy gets out of the TARDIS. Like, he opens the door. It's like watching like a 60-year-old guy like doing his morning routine. So he like kind of totters out of his house and like, locks the door and like adjusts his hat. And then he turns around and just gets decimated. Like they just open fire on this random guy that just showed up out of this box. And
it's like the scene from RoboCop.
It's so sad.
They just blow him away for no reason.
Yeah. Just,
just
wanting
walked out of a box.
gun violence in San Francisco.
Those damn Asian street gangs.
So he goes down, and they're like, oh, that's not who we meant to shoot, even though you weren't shooting at him when he left. I don't know. So they run, and there's like a bunch of sirens, and Lee like comes out of hiding, and he finds McCoy, and he's like, "Oh, hang in there, buddy. I'll call an ambulance." And the master goo, falls out of the TARDIS keyhole and slithers away into the darkness, as an ambulance shows up. And they're now in the ambulance, and Lee puts the there's a guy that's driving, and then there's the guy that's in the back, and the guy in the back's
played
like,
by
"Hey,
Eric Roberts."
Eric Roberts. He's like, "Hey kid, you need to fill out this paperwork or else we can't help him." And he's like, "Okay." So Lee puts his name as John Smith. Haha, John Smith. And the goo has like tripled in size, so now it's like a snake, I guess. And it's in the ambulance, and this pains me. It's just like I can't do it. So we're in the hospital, and they run the doctor on a gurney through the hospital, and they're just like, out of the way. And they do an X-ray of his chest, and they put it up to the backlight. And one of the techs is like, "Oh, this guy has 2 hearts," and everyone's like, "Nah, that's crazy." And she's like, "Nah, it totally does." And they're like, "Whoa, that's weird." And meanwhile, in the ambulance, the snake goo crawls up the sleeve of a paramedic jacket, and just hangs out there, I guess. So the doctors in the hospital are like, "Oh, this guy's heartbeat is crazy. We should get cardiologist up in here and see what's wrong with him." And they're just like, "Oh yeah, who's on call?" And they make a joke. And then it cuts to this woman in this crazy ball gown, at the opera with the most pretentious opera glasses.
Single crocodile tear.
Yeah, and
falling down her face.
Super, super fake, it's ridiculous. There's a single tear, and she gets a call on her beeper because it's 99 or 96. And she's like, oh, Grace, I have to go.
Holloway.
Yeah. And the guy she's sitting next to is just like, oh, not this again. So she leaves.
Oh, real quick question. Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that you watch this show, did you realize that Grace Holloway is Ryan's mom from the OC?
Oh, whose mom? Ryan?
Ryan's mom, Ryan Atwood's mom.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
So yeah, Grace Holloway in this Doctor Who TV movie, that's Ryan's mom, which is super distracting anytime I watch the OC. Because Cassandra, I don't know if you've ever seen the OC, but like Ryan's mom is like a kind of the California equivalent of like a white trash alcoholic. So, yeah,
wonderful.
He's just a really different character from someone crying.
I mean, there's a reason that he lives with the Cummins.
Yeah, right. So like she goes from being like this, pretentious, classy, like opera loving cardiologist to like a white trash alcoholic.
Oh my god.
Yeah, from Chino.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's all you had to say.
Yeah. So.
Oh man.
So yeah, good times for Grace Holloway. I guess hard times.
Oh man, that's what happens after the doctor leaves.
Yeah.
Oh no. So future Ryan's mom, I guess. She leaves the opera, and there's a shot of her just running down the hall of the hospital, barefoot, like just with her ball gown like billowing behind her, and it's actually pretty cool. But it's like super, super dramatic. Like all of this movie is. Everything is just like ridiculously over the top. For, I don't know. Personally, I'm not a fan, but we have, whatever. So she leaves the opera, and she just decides immediately to operate in her ball gown. So she's like prepping for surgery, and like people are like assisting her into her like scrubs. Or like her emergency, like whatever, like sterile clothes. And she gets a phone call from this guy, and she's just like, no, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And like, he hangs up with her. So whatever, that guy's a loser. So she leaves the opera, and she's,
how dare you save this man's life while we're trying to watch the opera.
Everything is about me.
No wonder she became an alcoholic and moved to Chino.
Oh. No.
That was Ryan's dad.
No, she like gets back with him. Oh no.
Anyway.
So she apparently just really likes opera because she decides to operate on another human being while listening to opera. And her coworkers are like completely okay with this, I guess. Personally, I'd find it a little distracting.
I just watched
whatever.
the Will Smith movie Concussion, and he's a surgeon, and he listens to music while operating.
Yeah, I think most surgeons listen to music while they operate. It's just I doubt it's usually opera.
Right. Like, yeah. I don't know. Any other music, like opera has its place, but like not in the operating room.
No, I feel like what you would want is to like scale back on the drama of doing surgery. You'd want it to make it feel like more like, oh, this is just my everyday job, no stress here, la da da. Like but if you play like it's Madame Beaufry, right? Is what she's playing? Isn't that what they
Madame
say?
Butterfly.
But Madame Butterfly.
Yeah.
is that like, so she's playing like this like really dramatic like Madame Butterfly opera, and you're just like, all right. And also, not for nothing, but does she really like opera, or does she like Madame Butterfly? Because I don't know opera, but I've heard of Madame Butterfly. And I don't know. It seems like maybe she's just playing the hits. I don't know. The opera equivalent of playing the hits. That's what I call opera. 5.
It's like Romeo and Juliet, Carmen, and like the magic flute and Swan Lake.
Yeah. one of those operas from Amadeus, like.
Oh man. So I don't know what hospital protocol is, but like, I don't know. Maybe his heart is just going crazy that it warrants emergency surgery, but like their plan is to insert a tiny camera into this guy's heart to look at it and figure out what's wrong with it. And I'm like, okay, sure. I guess that's what doctors do.
It doesn't. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't seem logically. I mean, I don't know anything about medical health, but logically, it seems like because their problem is that his heart is thumping a mile a minute, and it's because it's 2 hearts thumping. So instead of thump 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 thump, it's going thump 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 thump. And so they're like, "Oh my God, this guy's gonna have a heart attack." If this guy's gonna have a heart attack, do you really want to plunge something into his heart? I mean, it just doesn't. It seems like a logical fallacy to me.
I don't know, but I didn't go to medical school, and I don't like opera as much as her. So apparently, she knows.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
So while they're like, she has her scalpel, and she's like psyching herself out for this surgery. And honestly, I don't know about you, but when I listen to classical music, I want to conduct, and I feel like that'd be really dangerous with a scalpel.
Oh God. This is my favorite part. Oh God. Oh God.
Oh no. Everyone
suction.
But the doctor, as she's about to like cut him open, the doctor wakes up on the operating table and just like babbles, and he's like, "I'm not human." And everyone's like, "Sure, buddy, okay." And he keeps like waking up and saying all this random stuff, about the master and time anomaly or whatever. So they give him more anesthesia, and she does the surgery, and she's like, "Oh, this is weird. Shouldn't I be in this part of the heart?" And they're just like, "No." And she's like, "Oh man, I'm lost." And they're just like, "Oh, that's not good." So like, I don't know what she's doing, but I guess she gets really flustered, and the probe snaps, or it breaks.
Yeah.
And it breaks like really violently. Like, it looks like it stabs him somewhere. So like, the doctor goes into cardiac arrest, and they are trying to bring him back with like the electro whatever paddle things. And it's like really visceral and kind of terrifying, because like, you just have the doctor on this medical table, and he's like jolting, and he like dies. So Dr. Grace, she's like really shaken up about this. So she looks at the x-rays, and she's like, "There's 2 hearts. Like, no wonder I like sucked at this, I guess." And she questions Lee, because he came in with the doctor, and she's like, "Hey, do you like, this guy died, like, how well did you know him? Like, did you even know him at all? Like, where's his family?" And Lee's like, "I don't know. I'm just gonna take his stuff." And he he like grabs the brown paper bag. It's like a lunch sack. It's like a grubby lunch sack. So he grabs it and just runs. Like he just takes off. And she's like chasing after him, but he gets away. And then we catch up with our friend Eric Roberts, the paramedic guy, who is sleeping at home, and apparently he has like some like marital issues because like he snores really loud and his wife's not a fan. And like not, she's just like, shut up, oh my god, but like it's just like comically loud snoring.
Was this before sleep apnea was talked about, or
right?
a thing? Maybe there was no solution to this,
right?
Sort of thing.
Just like deal with it or get a divorce. Like I don't know. So snake goo comes back to life, and now it actually looks like a snake. It's really freaky. It looks like a cobra for some reason. It's been hibernating in his paramedic jacket. So it's like, it's slithering across his apartment. And then we meet like the weirdest autopsy guys ever. Like they're super like bros. They're just like, hey bro, what's going on? Man, we cut open dead bodies. Yeah. And they're just like, oh yeah, what you going to do tomorrow night for New Year's Eve? And we set up that we are in like December 30th, and there's a costume party, which is cool, I guess.
I feel like at this juncture, it cannot be understated who one of those two are, because I every time I watch this, I get distracted by Will Sasso, because I'm just like, what is he doing in this movie?
Oh, that is Will Sasso.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I thought that character was one of the better characters in the movie.
Yeah, that was Will Sasso.
So I'm glad that guy went on to become successful.
Ish.
Yeah, I mean, comparatively.
I think he was on Mad TV. I think he was on Mad TV at this point. So yeah. He was like, I don't know if he was just in like Fox's stable of actors or what, but yeah, he got to play the most chill morgue clerk like ever. I feel like he could star in a Kevin Smith movie called Morgue Clerks.
Oh God.
It would be very similar. He would be the Randall.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I don't know. So they like McCoy's body. They like wheel McCoy's body into the morgue, and you're just like, okay, sleep tight, little buddy. Like it's really weird, like gallows humor. And then we return to Snake Goo, and Snake Goo jumps into Eric Roberts' open snoring mouth while he's sleeping, and it's very gross and it's very uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, he stops snoring. He stops snoring, so his wife is happy.
It's horrible.
It's terrible. Like his whole body goes rigid, and it sounds like he's being like muffled in his sleep, and then it's fine. And she's like, "Oh, finally, sweet peace."
It sounds like he's drowning.
Yeah, it's really like the CGI transparent snake goo just shoving its way down this man's mouth. And then we cut back to the morgue, and the loud, boisterous one is watching the like old, that guy. He's watching the old black and white Frankenstein movie because that's what you do in the morgue. And then we get
again things have to be nailed over the head.
Oh man,
really hard. Like before it was time, now it's alive.
Like
it's ridiculous.
It's the weirdest thing. So the doctor is in the freezer and he starts regenerating. I don't know why there's lightning. but there is. And we're cutting back and forth from his like body on the table to the screen, the Frankenstein movie. And then finally, like his face like twitches and like morphs in like really bad 90s like special effects, and then we get our regeneration from McCoy into Paul McGann.
Yeah, and so he's so McGann he actually kind of looks like Frankenstein's monster, because he's like kind of like, you know, like he's got like kind of like with the long hair, and he's sort of clinging to his like hospital gown, you know.
He has like a Kenneth Branagh kind of look to him.
Very much, yeah. And so he's, you know, Will Sasso sees him and like freaks out, and and then Paul McGann is wandering through like the ruins of this hospital, and he
the ruins of this hospital.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I think they mentioned that there was a closed wing of the hospital that they were like renovating, and I think that's what he's walking through. Yeah.
Okay.
The ruins.
So, but it doesn't.
It's just a really funny way of putting it. The ancient ruins of this modern hospital.
It's like this Jesus figure like wandering across this post-apocalyptic like hospital thing. Like, it's really, really weird.
Yeah. And he gets splashed by some water, and he's really distraught. And eventually he comes to this wall of mirrors, just like a bunch of mirrors, and he gets a fresh look at his new face. And it surprisingly, he's not too. He freaks him out rather than like calm him down. Where he's like, at least some, you know, that could have been worse. And that he falls to his knees and proclaims to whatever God will listen to him, "Who am I? Who am I?"
Yeah, it's while flashing back and forth between him and the now up and walking around Eric Roberts, master.
Oh my god!
You know what? I watched the hell out of an Eric Stoltz master. But yeah, have we gotten to the? I always get confused about when the juicy shushing happens. When he tells his wife to shush, but it's like he like smashes his finger against his lips, and it's like I don't know if he was just like if he like poured water all over his lips first, or it's like a Saint Bernard. It's disgusting.
Ew.
Yeah. So much saliva. Anyway, yeah, Eric Roberts is the master now. As well. It's like, dude, it does that weird like lightning flashes like back and forth between Eric Roberts Master and Paul McGann Doctor, while the Doctor is shouting, "Who am I?" It's the most it's exasperating acting. Like it's so bad that it's good again, but then exhausting. Because it's just like, this is insane. Who told you to do this? Oh my God. Wow. Anyway, so the next morning.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, yeah, the master murders he strangles his wife off screen.
Yeah.
And
juicy
then
shish.
Yeah, and the next morning the hospital is kind of, you know, there's a hubbub over this corpse that got up and walked away. Will Sasso has a scene with Grace Holloway. She's like, "He was a different guy," and she's like, "You're dumb." And meanwhile, I mean, after that, the Dr. Grace Holloway is brought in by her boss, and the boss is like, "Hey, you're fired. You messed up." And there was like people watching. I don't know if it was like the board or what movie, who important people were watching, and like you murdered Sylvester McCoy on the table.
Yeah, it was one of those like
operating theaters.
Yeah, the operating theaters, like the one from that Seinfeld episode where they dropped the junior mints inside the person.
Yeah, the Nick.
Yeah.
And so clear out your stuff, and Grace Holloway puts all of her stuff in a box, and while going to her car to leave, she is accosted by Paul McGann, who is still very confused. But what he snuck into. So earlier, one of the coroners referenced that for the New Year's Eve costume party, he was going to dress as Wild Bill Hickok, and so Paul McGann steals his Wild Bill costume, and it becomes the iconic Eighth Doctor costume that we're all familiar with. And so flash forward, the Doctor is in the parking garage, and he's like, "Oh, you, I remember you, help me. And she's like, get away. And the Doctor sneaks into Grace Holloway's car and was like, "You have to help me." And then he pulls this wire out of his chest, and that's kind of what convinces Dr. Grace Holloway that this is in fact the man that she accidentally killed on the operating table.
I gotta say, for all of the unsubtle things that this movie does, that is a very clean and interesting way to prove that this guy is the same guy that she killed on the operating table.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really like that. She broke that camera inside his chest, attached to that wire, and then he pulls it out of his chest. Like that's a really solid way of doing that, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, for a weird problem, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Kind of a one of a kind screenwriting problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Robert McKee never taught, like, when you have to prove that the body is a new person, the same body. And so they drive to they go to Grace's house, right?
Mm-hmm.
First, yeah, they go to Grace's house, and he's like, I don't know who I am, but I remember Gallifrey, and she's like, well, he's cute, so I'll listen to him some more.
Real quick before I just have to mention, before they go to her house, the reason that he gets her to drive away is because he doesn't want the hospital staff to kill him again.
Aww.
Yeah,
he's just like
they'll kill
they're
me.
Crazy in there. They're gonna kill me again.
Yeah, and
it's pretty great. And also, Bruce, the Master, visits the hospital dressed as the T-800.
Yeah,
he's like cosplaying as the Terminator,
and he like pulls his fingernail off in front of the orderly.
Yeah,
and there's a part where he's like, "Hey, where did where's the guy?" I'm like, "He's dead, Bruce." He's like, "I know that, and where's his stuff?" And he's like, "Oh, that boy had it, the one that brought him in the ambulance." And he was like, "Oh, the Asian boy." And the woman says, "Asian, Bruce, you're sick." And I was like, okay. It's kind of just like, I mean, that's his nationality. It wasn't really like a remark or anything. So the Doctor, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is a sick thing to say, that someone's Asian.
I think at the time people were associating, like, I think they were wanting you to get like the exact country correct.
Okay.
So they wanted to
Instead
say
of
like
saying,
Chinese or whatever.
Yeah. The Orient.
Right.
Aww.
So like saying the Asian was like synonymous with being like the Oriental. Like,
Gotcha.
I think at the time, like as far as like 1996 political correctness was concerned.
Sure. It's nice that that's what was considered rude back then.
Yeah.
And so there's a scene where Paul McGann is like kind of following Grace through like this park, and she's like, "Well, what do you remember?" And he's like, "I remember I was lying on the grass of Gallifrey. I remember Gallifrey. I was lying on the grass and at this point, it was really clear to me that Paul McGann is definitely probably arguably one of the most unlucky doctors, because he's really good, and I could really imagine watching like a season of him. He's he's like as handsome as 10, but he's like as noble as 9, but he also has like really cool playful moments of like 11. Like there's this really cool moment where like he starts jumping up and down, and Grace is like, "What is it?" And he's like, "These shoes, they fit so perfectly." And I was like, "That's cool."
Yeah. 8 is, for my money, like, I talk about, like, I love every Doctor kind of equally, but like I think for me the 8th Doctor is like the ultimate Doctor. Like, he has everything you could possibly want in one guy. Like, he's just like every characteristic you want. Like, you want the silliness, he does the silliness. You want the nobility, he does that too. You want your Doctor to be a little sexy, well, he's got that going for him as well. So like he's just kind of the whole package.
Yes.
Which makes it extremely unfortunate that he just has the TV movie.
Yeah.
Although
I think
thankfully we'll hear tons of audio adventures with him, and you'll see just how good of a Doctor he is.
Yeah. And it sort of speaks to his, he makes such a strong stamp on the role that, I mean, his performances, I think, single-handedly the reason that this movie isn't like completely excommunicated from the canon.
Yes.
Why it can't be swept under the rug as like this weird, the Doctor Who equivalent of like the Star Wars holiday special,
Well, what's funny though is that for a long time it kind of was like until I forget which story it was. I want to say, was it Human Nature, Cassandra? It was Human Nature, right? That was the episode that made this canon. Because that was the first time in New Who that they referenced the 8th Doctor with an image of Paul McGann, I think.
I don't remember. It's been a
because he drew him in his little notebook.
Yeah.
I think that was the first time, and that was like season 3. So there was a solid. I remember watching the first 2 seasons of that show and getting a little anxious about the idea that no one really knew whether this movie was canon or not. Because they were calling Eccleston, they called Eccleston 9 and they called Tennant 10, but they never referenced 8 at all. Because 9 just kind of came through the door swinging.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was a time where no one really knew one way or the other.
When did Big Finish start doing their stuff? Was it before the series came back?
Yeah, they started doing their stuff, I think, in like 2001, 2002, something like that.
So, I mean, like, I guess it was canon there, but...
Yes, right. But Big Finish wasn't made canon until Night of the Doctor, so...
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
When we really deep dive into like Doctor Who mythology and Nick just gets quiet, I feel really guilty.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry, Nick.
No. And so, it sounds like I'm fast forwarding, but I'm actually not. So like, they're on and so Doctor has this kind of euphoric discovery where he's like, I don't remember exactly who I am, but I'm definitely like me again.
Mm-hmm.
He has like, and then he responds by like beginning to snog Holloway, and in her first random like break of whatever character she is, goes along with it, and she's into it. I mean,
that kiss is not for. I mean, too, because it's the first time the Doctor has ever kissed anyone.
Mm-hmm. And to quote 11, it does start to happen.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, speaking of special friendships, the Master catches up with I keep wanting to call him People need to call him Tino, like from Ninja Turtles 2.
Oh, that makes me happy. Oh, Lee and the Master. Like, I want one of those inspirational, like, black border posters that's just a picture of Chang Lee and the Master, and it just says below it, special friend.
Oh no.
I really want to make a meme where it's him in like the T100 outfit, and then him in like the full on Master outfit, and then like find a man who can do both.
Yes. I want to see both of those so bad.
Get on it, listeners.
Oh, beautiful.
So the Master catches up with Lee, and he's like, "Hey, bro, I remember me. It's Bruce." And he's like, "I guess, yeah, you're in the ambulance." And he's like, "Listen, I need your help. I'm actually an alien called the Master." And Lee's like, "Go on." And he's like, "So there's this guy who sucks, and he's called the Doctor, and he stole my TARDIS, and like he's a bad guy, and I need you to help me stop him from doing the plot." And Lee's like, "Well, what's in it for me?" And Eric's like, "Well, what's your like wildest dream?" And he's like, 1 million, 2 million, nickel and dime. And he's like, "What if I gave you like so much money? They're like a stupid amount of money. Like, what would you do with it?" And Lee's like, "Power." He's like, "Yeah, you're speaking my language." He's like, "You sound like a protagonist." And he's like, "Yeah, I know. Let's go." And so, meanwhile, something happens, and the Doctor realizes that the Master is back. Are they already looking in the eye at this point? Like the eye of whatever, the eye of humanity,
Eye of Harmony.
Yeah, the eye of harmony.
No, well, yeah, I think are they? I'm trying to like look at my notes.
Well, eventually it happens, and the Doctor is...
Oh, yeah, because you need a human eye to look into the Eye of Harmony, so the Master's using Lee to look into the Eye of Harmony. And the Doctor can't... The Doctor is like... He like kind of becomes like psychically aware that the eye is open or whatever.
Yeah, they kind of have like and he's like, he deduces that the one activating the eye is the Master, and
the Master,
the Doctor freaks out,
and also the Master realizes that if the Eye of Harmony can only be opened by a human, then the Doctor must be half human.
Yes,
yeah. Naturally.
Naturally,
yeah, canon.
No,
write it down. And so, so the Doctor's like, "Oh no, the Master,
no." Just doesn't even entertain the idea.
Shut it down.
Nope.
Does that come up in the? Because like, I remember, did they bring up him being half human in New Who?
I think they've referenced the idea before, but they've never. He's never come out and said it the way that he does in this movie. And in
it's kind of like Vin Diesel in that regard.
Yeah, and in another like in comics and things, like he has referenced the fact that the Titan comics just did an Eighth Doctor like miniseries that was really, really good. And in that he references, because he like hooks up with Grace for a second, like Grace goes on an adventure with him again, and she was like, she mentioned something about him being half human, and he was just like, "Oh, you believe that? No." Like,
yeah,
he's like, "Oh, no. I needed him to believe that, and I needed you to believe it so that he would believe it. It was a whole thing. Don't worry about it. I'm not any human.
I lie a lot.
Yeah.
I lie a lot to women."
Right. Yeah.
And so the Doctor starts freaking out, and then Grace Holloway's like, "I don't like you anymore. Bye." And she like runs to her house and like locks the door, and he's like, "Grace!"
I'll be honest, when you said that, I pictured her running away in the dress again.
Yeah, in slow motion.
They're
like
and then just running.
Yeah, they're like Cinderella. Yes. Yeah. And So she's like, I'll call an ambulance. And the doctor's like, Grace, look at what I'm doing to this window. Grace, look, it's the master. And he like puts his hand through the window, and it's like the molecular whatever. Grace, look, atomic clock, Grace. And she's like, yeah, bring 2 beds. And so she calls an ambulance, and the master's like, I got one of those. Come on, Lee. And so he drives the ambulance to Grace's house. And I'm going to okay. And so they get there, the ambulance gets there, and the doctor sees on the news that like they're unveiling like an atomic clock at this gala event at this museum. And Grace is like, I'm on the board of trustees. And he's like, cool. So are you okay? And so the ambulance gets there, and he's like, I want to like drive us to the clock. And the master's like, okay. And she's like, I'm on the board of trustees. And he's like, okay. And so like they're driving like it's a cab now to the museum. And so the doctor is talking to the master, like explain, like he's just a dude, but it's like, hey, we have to get to this clock on time. And she's like, yes, yeah, we have to get to, he's crazy, but we made out, but now I don't like him anymore, but he's crazy. And they do some banter, and there's this really funny line. I can't remember it now, but like the master corrects her grammar, and I like laughed out loud. That was like that was actually really funny. It was just so like it was just such a, and this is kind of when the movie sort of hit a high point for me, because I actually kind of really like the I think Eric Roberts, for all of his his Eric Robertness. He really is bringing like a sense of fun villainy to this role, and McGann's really feeding off of that, and it's like, okay, this is cool. And so then the doctor sees the master's like gross, like fat, like lizard eyes, and he's like, oh, and he like spits venom on Grace's arm.
Mm-hmm.
And then the doctor responds, as any of us would, by grabbing a fire hydrant and like emptying it onto
this is my
Bruce.
This is my favorite part.
Yeah,
this is my
and so then Eric starts like convulsing like Wicked Witch of the West style, and my man starts going like, get it off me, get it off me, get it off me, get it off me, get it off me. And he's like, what's going on back there? And it sounded like he was saying, get it off me.
I've never understood what he was saying. It just sounded like he randomly started talking in tongues. Like it just sounded like he sprayed him with the fire extinguisher, and then he's just going, like he just started. And I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, like he just turns in. Yeah, he turns into like the preacher from Justified. Oh my God. And I heard "get it off me," but I who knows? That's like a Rorschach. It's like a verbal Rorschach test. Where it's like, all right, I want you to listen to Eric Roberts and hear what you say. I heard my mother's voice, and so and so they pull over the ambulance. Oh, they hit like traffic. Like there was like a wreck or something. And so like the highway stopped up. And so they pull over, and the doctor and Grace like, let's get out of here. And so they get out of there, and they run up to a cop, and he's like, hey, would you like a jelly baby? And I was like, oh, that's fun. And the cop's like, what is a jelly baby? Yeah, he just pulled him out of like his coat, which he's never. So presumably, that coroner had jelly babies in his pocket, which is a fun little, I guess. And so he's like, "You mean jelly bean?" And he's like, "No, jelly baby. You want a jelly baby?" And he's like, "What's a jelly baby?" And Grace is like, "He's British." And the doctor's like, "Yeah, I guess I kind of am. Okay, hey, I took your gun, and if you don't give me your bike, I'm going to shoot myself." And the cop's like, "This took a turn." You were just offering me candy. And then so the doctor's like, I'll shoot me if you don't give me this, you don't give me the bike. And then he's like, no. And then Grace takes the gun and shoots the bike and says, give us the bike that I just shot. And he's like, well, yeah, now you can take it. You just shot it. I don't want it. And so he's like, fine, let's go. And so they ride the motorcycle off. And the cop's like, that was single-handedly the weirdest thing that ever happened to me on the force. And then, meanwhile, they've gotten all of the weird, like, fire hydrant foam off of the master. And he's like, why, what's going on? And Lee's like, there's a lot of traffic. And he's like, what kind of car is this? And he's like, oh, right. And so they like mount the curb and like they're in hot pursuit. And then they get a fun little motorcycle, not really a chase, but just a motorcycle ride kind of. And the doctor says the Grace Holloway says my favorite line in the movie, which is, I finally meet the right guy and he's an alien. And I was like, let's unpack that for a second. So like, that's the only line in the scene. There's like no banter. He doesn't say any, he doesn't like, you have wonderful hair, Grace, or like, you're such a good doctor, Grace. They're not saying, imagine like if you're like walking down the street and just like a person you're on like a first date with is like, you finally meet the perfect guy and he's Hispanic. And I'm like, hey, right guy? Like and this is kind of my problem with, I think Grace Holloway might be the worst companion that I've seen so far in this sojourn that we've been going on. Because she's kind of like the Willy of Doctor companions, I think. You know?
Yeah. Well, though I will say I have a rule that he has, in order to be a companion.
Oh, the TARDIS rule. Yeah.
In order to be a companion, you have to be someone who has been invited to be a companion by the Doctor,
which happens,
and travel in the TARDIS for more than one adventure.
Yeah. Okay, so she's one for two,
right?
She's sort of like in the Craig pool of like sort of companions, but not really familiars. She's like a familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's sort of like in the same school of like the Why Are They Here Brigade and Craig and
right. Exactly.
Eggsy. No, well, not Eggsy. What was his name?
We always call him Eggsy, but
I either want to call him Eggsy or Moses.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Either one of those is right. I forget his name.
But he's been in the TARDIS, right? At this point,
I don't think so. I don't remember.
That's weird for two adventures to not be. Anyway, he should be. So I don't know. I don't like Grace because even companions that aren't too cool or heroic or badass, at least they're, I don't know, they have kind of an and I don't like that the American version of a companion is very much like and she starts off kind of cool where it's like, oh, she's a doctor, and they kind of play with that where it's like doctor, oh, doctor, but I don't know, she was like flip like, he's crazy, I want to make out with him, he's crazy. And so
I think, but I will say I don't really blame the movie for that. I kind of just blame the 90s, because that was a general problem with, because she's not any more offensive as a character than, say, like Jennifer Aniston on Friends.
Oh yeah, and I guess that's the bummer is like, oh, it sucks that this, because when I think of like an American Doctor companion, I'm like, well, why isn't it like Dana Scully?
Yeah.
Like
yeah, totally.
Yeah, but anyway, but that's whatever. And so that's all one. And so they get to the museum, and she's like, I'm on the board of trustees. And the Doctor's like, that hasn't helped. Like, what is it?
Also,
I don't.
Wait. We didn't finish unpacking that line. Hold on. Because,
because
I want to unpack the fact that she says, I finally meet the right man and he's an alien. So what part of the situation that you find yourself in this moment makes you think that you finally found the right man? Because
like what?
He just threatened to shoot himself to a cop and then made you steal his bike. And now you're riding away on the bike together, and you say, I finally found the right man, and he's an alien. Him being an alien is the lowest of his problems.
And like of the time of like the I guess like 6 hours I guess total that she spent with him as of yet, she spent a good like 40% of that fearing for her life and safety.
Yeah.
Like thinking that he was like a manic schizophrenic, like that would like eat her.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And then like 20% of that time was making out.
Right.
And, and McGann's charm goes a long way. Like you really feel like this is a, and I guess they have okay chemistry, but, anyway, so they get to the museum or wherever it is, the observatory or whatever the hell. And, she's like, ooh, champagne. She's like, nope, we're on the clock. Focus up. And, there's some banter where he's like, they meet like this like kind of snooty museum guy, and he's like, oh, well, what's wrong? He's like, well, I'm human on my mother's side, and he's like, oh, you slay me, and he's like, and so they
Professor
find
Wag.
Professor Wag. That's a cool name. And so they're stopped by like an intern or like a guy that works at the museum. And he's like, you're not supposed to be back here. And he's like, would you like a jelly baby? And he's like, a jelly bean? And he's like, you got cheese. No, look, just eat it. He's like, oh, and don't answer question number 2 on the midterm. Answer number 3. And he's like, what? And he's like, no, like you're going to try and answer number 2, but that's too hard. Just answer number 3. And he's like, oh, okay. That weirdly makes sense to me. Bye, Paul McGann. Paul McGann's like, goodbye. And she's like, what was that about, doctor? And he's like, oh, he's going to earthquakes. And
that moment is really weird because...
Well, it is weird because the doctor is never does again really kind of like mess with people's futures so flippantly. Yeah, if he meets like Edgar Allan Poe, he might be like, "Oh, careful of those, careful of those ravens." But he just knows this guy's life like immediately.
Yeah, he's like Santa Claus.
Yeah, this thing is like, "Oh, I know what you did," and so they
suddenly I got visions of Paul McGann as the Doctor starring in I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah,
don't.
I know what you did last summer.
You're gonna want to not tell anyone about the body. Don't do that. Tell someone that you hit that man. He's gonna kill all your friends otherwise.
Freddie, you and Sarah will be
the
love of each other's lives.
It's gonna seem like you can get away with it. You can't get away with it.
There will be 2 Scooby-Doo movies. And the second one, monsters will be unleashed.
Scrappy-Doo is the villain.
And then
don't trust him.
And then at CinemaCon, they'll announce that they're rebooting the Scooby-Doo franchise and calling it Scoob, but it's an acronym, and it will be the first entry in a Hanna-Barbera shared universe.
And then meanwhile, the kids that just ran over someone look at him and go, what?
I didn't get any of that. What's a shared universe? And so,
oh my God.
And so, okay, so this is where I get this is where it starts to fuzz out. So they're at the museum, mm-hmm. but then the Master and Lee catches up with them, right? And then the next thing I remember is they're in the TARDIS.
Well, they flee on the motorcycle.
Okay, yeah, they get away on the motorcycle again, and then they're at the TARDIS, mm-hmm. and the Doctor gets like knocked out somehow, and he's like on a slab in the TARDIS, and then the Master Eric Roberts he comes out, God love him, and like full on like old school Master regalia, which
I mean, he's just cosplaying as Doctor Strange is what's going on. Like,
okay, so is that not like a famous like Master costume?
No, it's kind of like what the Time Lords wear in like their like court or whatever, like, with the crazy collars and the
yeah, like the Timothy Dalton kind of outfit.
Yeah.
It's God, imagine Timothy Dalton as the Master in this,
dude.
Mr. Skinner.
Oh God, that would have been so good. No, but yeah, I'm
the Master.
because he's wearing like
arrest me. I'm the Master.
Because he's wearing because he's wearing the gloves and everything. Like, it just looks like a full-on Doctor Strange outfit, and he's got an Asian assistant.
Oh no!
He's just literally Doctor Strange.
Oh my god!
Don't you get it? Man, Doctor Who versus Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange. Man, I wish BD Wong was Lee. That'd be great. Well, no. It's not BD Wong. It's the other Wong.
Has the Master referred to Chang Li as the Chinese boy yet?
The Asian child?
The Asian child.
Yeah, that was forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're sick, Bruce.
Child.
Yeah.
And so, Grace Holloway has been brainwashed by the Master, and he's like, put on the Iron Maiden on the Doctor's head. And he's like, no, Grace, remember our time, remember the tree, Grace, don't do this. And she's like, I have no free will, unlike before when I did. And she puts this weird mask on the Doctor that's like it's kind of like half an Iron Maiden, half like that thing that Alex has to wear in Clockwork Orange. And it's like stretching his eyes open. And the Master's like, okay, so I only had... Okay, this is what we haven't brought up yet. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen the movie, so they say early on that a Time Lord only has 13 lives. And the Master has wasted all of them by getting killed by the Doctor. And so he's...
I don't think directly by the Doctor.
Sure, yeah.
I think the suggestion is that he keeps like getting put in front of tribunals and murdered.
Becoming goo and then possessing someone else. Yeah. And then he's like, no, don't you see, Asian boy? He's trying to steal all my lives. This is my TARDIS. And he's like, I don't know. I have your stuff in a bag, and my stuff. And he's like, oh, what my life has become. And then he tries to like talk reason to, because like, Lee's going to look into the Eye of Harmony and do the sciencey science. Mm-hmm. And so then he like finally, talks some sense into Lee, and Lee's like, wait, are you the bad guy? And Eric Roberts is like, oh, Lee. Oh, sweet, sweet Lee. And then he snaps Lee's neck, and then
Grace is possessed.
Yeah, Grace is possessed.
And so he's going to make her look in there.
Yes. Yeah. And then the Master kicks Grace. No, wait. No, he throws Grace.
No, he...
kills Grace.
He, kisses her, which is gross. Or, takes the possession out of her mouth or something. So, she has, human eyes. So he forces her head to look into the light or whatever, and then
it's super rapey, you guys.
Yeah,
it's super gross and rapey.
It's really gross. So he forces her to look at this thing, and the Eye of Harmony opens, and the end of the world as we know it. And then the Doctor's like, no. And is this where the countdown happens? The really terrible.
The countdown to the ball dropping. Because have we mentioned that it's New Year's Eve? Because it's New Year's Eve.
Yeah, I mean the whole film is centered around the millennium.
Yeah, New Year's Eve, 1999. Y2K.
Y2K. I never realized this, but Y2K stands for year 2000.
You seriously didn't know that?
I guess I just never knew it that clearly. I was like, oh, it's literally year 2000.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how that NASA is space, but maybe you don't know actually oh, it's the National Association of Aeronautics, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a thing, and so everyone's like the millennium, and Will Sasso's freaking out, and it's a weird montage of people getting ready for the millennium as this final thing is happening. And Grace is like, I won't do it. And Master's like, okay. And then he throws Grace off of a ledge, and he's like, my boo. And he in a rare kind of physical action hero move, kicks the Master and frees himself. and I literally don't remember what happened next.
So Grace manages, she like escapes and she manages to start the TARDIS like 1 second before midnight because the doctor told her that piloting the TARDIS is like setting an alarm clock. So she's like, I know how to set alarm clocks. Guys, the TARDIS is so much more complicated than setting an alarm clock.
It's more like it's like 4 people trying to set a giant alarm clock.
It's more like it's 6 people, right? Isn't it 6 pilots?
I think so. 6 or 8.
Yeah, it's like 6 or 8 pilots it takes to actually drive a TARDIS, like not crazy and erratically like the Doctor does by himself.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is that the TARDIS enters like temporal orbit, and the Master. So then the Master throws Grace off of the ledge that they're on. They're like on a balcony, and he throws her off the balcony, and she dies. And then the Doctor and the Master struggle over the Eye of Harmony, and the Master falls in. The Doctor tries to save him, but then the Master is just like, no,
never.
And then just like lets himself get sucked into the Eye of Harmony, and then the TARDIS like reappears like just before midnight, and energy from the Eye travels and revives Chang Li and Grace, and then the Eye closes. Why those things happen, I don't know, and I don't think there's a reason why the Eye, like I don't know if it's just like satiated because it ate the Master. I don't know. I don't know why the Eye closes, but it closes, and despite there being another TARDIS there with the Eye open, the Eye closing in the new TARDIS apparently supersedes the other one, and so now everything's fine. And then everybody gets out. Yeah.
Like their plan.
So
okay, so their plan, as I understand it, is the TARDIS won't start, so they have to jumpstart the TARDIS. And then they go back in time to make sure that before the Eye opens, and then fast forward in time, and then it magically fixes itself. Right? Like,
I think you're right. I just can't follow the logic.
Right. That's like, I know time travel is like not real, but that's not how time travel works. Like,
yeah, because there's no logic to it. Right. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a quick question. Yeah. I haven't seen I haven't seen the whatever the episode is where it's revealed that the Master was like that old man, you know? With Tenet and
Utopia?
Yeah, Utopia. Yeah, like, you know, kind of the beginning of like the, you know, John Saxon like finale arc with John Sim and whatnot.
Okay.
Is that do they like bullshit their way through him falling into the Eye of Harmony, or do they just not even address it?
The way that they address it without addressing it is say that the Master mastered his way out of the Eye of Harmony, and then just in time for the Time Lords, for the Time War to start, and the Time Lords basically what is that called? Where you're called into war? What is that called?
Oh, drafted.
Yeah, they
drafted into the Time War.
Yeah, they drafted all the Time Lords, including the rogue ones, and like
the Ronnie and whatnot.
So they brought the Master back, and they gave him a new set of regenerations.
Okay, cool. They gave him, which is kind of all he wanted.
Yeah, they gave him a new set of regenerations so long as he worked for them during the Time War, and then he, surprise, surprise, like got out of there and then hid as the old man Master in Utopia, and hid all of his Time Lordiness into the Watch, you know, so that the Time Lords couldn't find him to draft him again.
Okay,
that's why he was in hiding. So basically, he took their deal and then reneged on the deal, essentially, and got out of there.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad for the Master, because like his big want, you know, and the Doctor says like he wasted all of his lives. I want mine.
Yeah.
mine, and like it's just weird because oh my God, it began on Scarrow with my friend the Masters, and it's just weird because like he just gets more lives in Time of the Doctor, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't know, it's kind of like a bunch of Dragon Ball Z characters like fighting over who gets to fly, you know.
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna get the power of flight, and I'm like, bitch, everyone can fly in like a year. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I mean that's true, and also
which is fine. And like I kind of hit this kind of realization about Doctor Who. Well, we're not done. So like so Master's dead, and it's New Year's Eve, and everyone's happy, and the plot, the script brings Lee and Grace back to life. Mm-hmm. And
the Doctor gives Lee the gold that are the diamonds that he was promised by the Master. So that and Lee's just like, "What? Are you serious?" And the Doctor's just like, "Yeah, what the hell am I going to do with them?" And he's like, "All right," and then he like runs away.
Yeah.
But then there's this really weird moment where he's like, "Oh, and Lee, remember, don't be here a year from now." Finger on nose, and Lee's like, "Oh, right, don't be here a year from now. I gotcha."
That I think of a moment of a okay. This movie has a lot of like weird moments I could do without, but I think that's the one that more than any other moment I wish wasn't here, because
I don't get it.
It's so poorly executed that you don't get it because it's poorly executed. All he's saying, I think, is he's suggesting that if he's in San Francisco a year from now, something's going to happen in San Francisco, and maybe he'll get hurt or whatever. But the way that it sounds, it's like this all-knowing thing, including Lee, for some reason, would know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's not
it's like him.
Could you imagine? Oh my God! Could you imagine if instead of San Francisco, this took place in New York and he said that?
That would be so scary and creepy.
How scary! That would be terrifying.
Can you imagine if, imagine it was like, "Oh, and Lee, like, yeah, Doctor, September 11th, 2000.
Oh my God.
Really specific.
The storms of the east will come to the west, and they will rise in time. Doctor, you scamp, and he like leaves.
Remember, Lee, jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams.
Jeez.
What?
Oh my!
Diana, the flower of Wales.
No.
A great typhoon will sweep the Cayman Islands. And so Lee leaves the party, and indeed the franchise, and leaves the Doctor and Grace Holloway, to kind of say goodbye. And he's like, "You want to come with me on the TARDIS?" And Grace is like, "We both know that this isn't gonna happen for any of us." And he's like, "Yeah, I guess you're right." And he's like, "Well, back at it." And so he gets into his TARDIS and flies directly into an eternity of audio serials, never to be seen again, until 2014 when he dies and turns into John Hurt.
Yeah, it's true.
And then he settles back into his chair. He picks up The Time Machine by H.G. Wells and starts to play that song. And we fade out on the TARDIS as the record begins to skip, and he says, "Oh no, not again."
Good one.
Good one, Doctor.
Yeah, it's I think it's, look, I'm not complaining that Grace isn't his companion, but it's weird. If this was meant to be a backdoor pilot, it's weird that you don't establish a companion, unless the plan was that he would have a new companion every episode.
I guess they just wanted to keep their options open. I can imagine, where it's like, well, just in case we don't want to bring this actress back, But then the easiest thing is like he can just pop back in whenever and be like, "Grace, I need your help."
Yeah.
Right? It's your kid's Grace. Something's got to be done about your kid. He's going to move to the Orange County. He's going to get in a fight.
Grace,
gonna fall in love with a.
remember when I told Lee not to be here in a year? Well, he didn't listen. So
we have to go to Chino. Your son becomes best friends with a cute Jew. Southport. And then Peter Gallagher comes out and goes, I bet I can handle this. Oh, man. Sandy Cohen would be the greatest companion.
Be pretty, yeah, into it.
So I had a lot of fun with this, and I can definitely imagine why, if I were to see this as a kid, like you did, Scott, it probably would, because it's fun, and it's goofy, and it's like really hammy. But at the end of the day, like, it's interesting that you said that they were this whole garbage fire, this lovable garbage fire, was started because they wanted Doctor Who to be more like Star Trek: The Next Generation. But and as we're about to rewind the clock back to Hartnell, the thing that I'm starting to realize about this show is that Doctor Who was never supposed to be Star Trek. Star Trek is kind of like this smart, cerebral, slow, thought-provoking thing that, like, asks questions about, who are we, and race, and gender, and politics, and and using science fiction as a mirror to society. And Doctor Who is a children's show. It's for kids, and the best time to be a Doctor Who fan is when you're a child, and the adults that watch it because it's fun, and it's goofy, and it's innocent. And I'm definitely not saying that the show hasn't or shouldn't delve into more serious territory, but I think I'm starting to appreciate the show for what it is, and it is inherently silly and light and fun. And it's kind of something that's been weighing on me a lot these past couple of weeks, because I'm starting to look around at our culture and see that nothing is really for kids anymore. Like, Batman and Superman are murderers now, and like Daredevil is like bashing people's heads in with a billy club, and kids, I'm sad for them, kind of, because like I feel like our culture has become saturated with grown-ups wanting their toys to speak to them when they're grown-ups, when toys aren't supposed to speak to grown-ups. They're supposed to speak to kids. Mm-hmm. And so watching this and imagining like a young Scott, and it's not, this thing ain't, Finding Nemo, it's not a classic, but the fact that this could have introduced people like Scott and a generation to this franchise is really cool. And I think the best thing to come out of this is that this whole thing had just one hell of a doctor that in this, hour and a half of, garbage, kind of, was able to really strike a chord with people. And we wanted him back so much that they made like a whole subgenre of the show just for him. Mm-hmm. And I think it really speaks to his integrity and talent. And, we still want, we would still be down for Paul McGann to show up on the show again,
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
So
I remember there was a rumor going around after the reception of Night of the Doctor, and how everyone loved it. I remember there was that rumor going around where the BBC was toying with the idea of doing like a 6-episode, like 8th Doctor miniseries.
Yeah.
To give like Capaldi or to fill in the gap between like Matt Smith and Capaldi.
Yeah. No,
that would have been so amazing.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh my God.
I know. Didn't happen.
So there's plenty of campy moments, and it does truly fall apart in Act 3, but there's just too much fun to be had for this to be dismissed from the canon entirely. Mm-hmm. So, physician, heal thyself.
Yeah, I always have fun with this. Always.
Yeah.
And it's look, it's not very good, but it's really fun. And like you said,
It's
like
definitely something I would recommend all Whovians like seek out and watch.
and it has one of the best doctors we've ever had. It has, I think, like one of the coolest TARDISes we've ever had, and it's like and to me, it's kind of just like this magical thing. Like, and I know that it's not good, but it gives me the same warm and fuzzies as like Hook gives me warm and fuzzies. Even though Hook is not a good movie, like I still love it.
Yeah, or like for someone like someone like my age, I guess like Halloween Town.
I love that movie.
Like, yeah, totally, sure. And it's. Yeah, and so it
came out during a time where like Fox was making a lot of TV, like backdoor pilot TV movies, and I loved all of them. They did a Munsters version with the grandpa from Gilmore Girls as Herman Munster.
Huh.
They did a Munsters TV movie, and then they did a Generation X. They did like an X-Men movie. Backdoor pilot TV movie.
Oh yeah, Generation X.
Yeah. And like I loved that when it was on, but then I watched that and I was like, that doesn't even hold up to the extent that this does. That one was yikes. But but I loved all that stuff when I was a kid. I remember my dad taped this and the Generation X one, and they were on the same VHS, and I watched them all the time, like just watch them over and over again, because I loved them, and I loved the magic of this. Because the one thing that I'll say about this is like, with my writer brain on, I look at this and I'm like, are you kidding me? You're gonna set up Daleks, the Master, the TARDIS, regeneration, like you're gonna set up all of these concepts in one episode. I mean, that's the thing that they did right with Eccleston, is like they took a whole season and introduced basically all of his like most important things. Like, what is the most important things about Doctor Who?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he has a companion. He goes on a different adventure every episode. The Daleks are his main villain, and he regenerates. And they establish all of those things over the course of 13 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but here they just threw it all in a bag, shook it, and then threw the bag at your face.
Yeah.
And it wasn't well done. But as a kid, having all of those ideas thrown at my face was like a beautiful thing.
Yeah, because as a kid, I remember liking feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of what got me hooked on, like, Lord of the Rings, was, like, there was so much stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid watching Doctor Who and feeling like I discovered, like, a portal to a whole nother world that I knew nothing about. Yeah. And, and finding out about the Daleks and the Time War and, the Ronnie and all this stuff that sounds way cooler than it actually is. But it's like the ideas are almost better than like the execution of it. Mm-hmm. And it's a show that is 100% run on like pure imagination. And and so it's impossible to hate. Like it really is this movie.
Yeah. I mean, cause like I didn't start watching Doctor Who until I was, I think I was like 18 or 19. So like 2008, 2009.
Whoa, that's really weird that I started watching the show before you did.
Because I grew up on Star Trek and Star Wars, and I had no like frame of reference for it. So like my first exposure to the show was Eccleston, and then starting to delve into the classic stuff more, like watching this movie after seeing all of, Eccleston and Tennant had been done almost at that point. and like I like camp up to a point, and
Sure.
so like watching this as like a 20-year-old for the first time, like I had no patience for it, like because I'd seen like maybe a handful of classic Who, and then like all of them, the new Who, and then like this, and I'm just like, okay. But the thing that I really loved about it, and like even more so this time, was Paul McGann. And like his performance for me is what kind of holds it all together. Like it's not great, but it's the glue that they really needed.
Yeah, I guess the worst part about this is seeing how good he is and knowing that this is the only time we'll ever see him.
Yep. Unless you want to watch him die.
Like, yeah, like, and like,
which I have to admit, like, I still remember the day that that episode dropped and no one knew what it was. And I remember watching it, and I don't know. I think Cassandra, did I tell you, like, get off the internet until you can watch Night of the Doctor? Wasn't that?
Yeah, you were like, you need to watch this now. If you can't watch it, like, go into your hobo bunker and like disconnect from the internet until you can watch it.
Yeah, because I remember, like, I was like watching it and I was like, what the hell does this have to do with Doctor Who? And then when he shows up, and I forget what his first line in Night of the Doctor is, but he says something, and it was like instant welling up, like instant, because I was like, oh my God, it's Paul McGann. Like, because you just never thought you would ever see him again.
Yeah, because doesn't he have, like, doesn't he speaks off screen and then he walks into frame and it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, and the thing is, the great thing about him speaking off screen is that I knew his voice more than I know him.
Right. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I've been watching a lot of nature documentaries to like help me chill out. And I was watching this random thing and the narrator starts talking and I'm like, is that Paul McGann? And like within 5 minutes of like not having any context for this, like it was totally Paul McGann. And so like my concept of him, like as a doctor and like as an actor too, is just like his voice work. So I thought it was really cool how, like, you know, he does the line off camera and then like steps back into like canon pretty much.
Right. Off screen, he says, so what happens is the girl, the pilot, that her spaceship is crashing or whatever, she's calling for a distress call, and the distress beacon thing is saying like, do you need medical assistance? And he's like, no, I don't need a doctor. And then off screen you hear, I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
And then it zooms over and he goes, but probably not the one you were expecting.
So
and I just lost my mind. I don't even think I finished watching it, Cass. I'm pretty sure as soon as that happened, I paused, freaked out, and then immediately like texted you or DM'd you or whatever to warn you. Like before I even finished it, because I was like, don't ruin this for Cass.
And that's such a gift. That's such a kind thing to do to the fan. It would be like if Dash Rendar showed up in like Rogue One,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right, totally.
It'd be like, or like if like suddenly like Ashoka was mentioned in like Force Awakens.
Yeah,
it's like it's such a cool little like thank you.
Totally.
You know what? I think Paul McGann is the people's doctor. He's the fans' doctor.
Yeah, he might be. I don't know. I love Paul McGann so much, and I think he is like he's the doctor that's in my heart, I think. And it's because he was the first doctor, you know, that was ever like my doctor, you know.
His face was the first face that you ever saw.
Well, technically it was Sylvester McCoy, but he didn't talk, so I didn't really get to know him very well.
He gets shot.
I do want to make a point to point out that the doctor is in America for 5 seconds and is immediately gunned down.
By an Asian street gang, to be fair.
That's the most American thing I've ever heard. What happened? Oh, the doctor. What was America like? I got shot.
I died.
Sounds about right.
Do they make a joke about that in the moon landing one, where they're in the White House? Like,
I went to America once.
Yeah.
Once. I feel like that's
think
something
they do.
Yeah.
I think they might. I don't know, but
Matt's like a group of Asian like schoolboys walk
Oh my
past, and
God.
Matt's like, wait, hold, let them all pass. Doctor, what's wrong? Just shut up.
maybe I've always said like it's really weird that the doctor has never had an Asian companion, and suddenly it makes a lot of sense.
Oh no!
He just has like a weird. It's not even based in hate. It's just like it's in his thing now. He just has like a reaction.
Yeah.
Who are you? Put that down. What's going on? Stop. Where'd you come from?
Oh man!
Oh no!
It's weird that like the Master has only ever had Asian companions, though. Like, there's this one, and then there's like another. There's like a Pertwee story. I think it's Mind of Evil, where that like random like kung fu chick from China is like there, and
Right? Yeah. The James Bond episode.
yeah. So,
But I would kill to see Melissa Gomez in the Doctor Strange Master uniform.
Oh man, God. Yeah. So love Paul McGann so much.
If I really want him to be like the voice of like a car or like a Jarvis. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
it'd be so comforting.
yeah.
Like
He would be
like a
really
kid.
good at that. Like he has that. Yeah, he definitely has that voice. That's really good.
Turn right on LaSalle.
Yeah.
Your destination will
He
be on.
kind of has like, it's weird because he has like an optimistic
Timber.
it's an optimistic timber, but it's like he's like it's got like an Alan Rickman thing.
Yeah, where it's deep but it's warm. It's like hot chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause Alan Rickman has that thing where his voice sounds like naturally like ironic and detached and a little depressed.
Yeah, but then when he says something genuine, it's like the most heartwarming thing in the world.
Yeah. But I was like, yeah, I don't know. Paul McGann, man. It's good. It's good. I like Paul McGann. Yeah, so I'm excited when we come to Paul McGann next. We will be tackling his first audio adventure. With
What year was that made in?
Let me look it up. It's called Storm Warning.
Oh yeah, with Charlie.
Storm.
Yeah, with Charlie Pollard.
I love Charlie.
His first companion.
So does he
2001.
when he's dying? 2001. Okay.
Yeah.
So when he
It was only 5
so, like,
years after the television movie. That's really not that long.
No.
yeah.
Interesting.
So when he is regenerating and that part where he's like name checking all of his companions, so is Grace like the first one?
No, he doesn't even mention Grace.
He doesn't mention Grace.
No, Grace isn't a companion. Think about how long he is around. Because there's an argument to be made that Paul McGann's doctor is the doctor for the longest amount of time.
Sure.
And
I guess like second to Matt Smith, I guess, because of like Moffat-y stuff.
yeah. And so
Well, Moffat cheats.
yeah, right. So I'd still say Paul McGann might be the longest doctor like in continuity, but yeah, I mean, he had a one-off adventure right when he was born,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
her. Like, yeah, he mentions, I think let me go back to Night of the Doctor and I can probably tell you exactly which ones he says.
It's Charlie, and then Sriz?
Yeah. I know he definitely says Sriz.
Yeah.
Let me see.
And then what's her name?
Some of his past companions, Lucy.
Lucy.
He definitely says Lucy. Let me see here. Where is it?
Lee.
There's gonna be a reference. I'm just gonna Control F Lucy. There we go. He says Charlie, Chris, Lucy, Tamsin, Molly.
Oh.
And Chris is like barely a companion.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with the last two.
Tamsin is I believe Tamsin is like the person who follows up Lucy.
Oh, okay.
I think. Let me see here. Tamsin. Oh, no. Oh, that's weird that he mentioned her. Huh, I forgot about her. Okay. I can tell you, I don't want to spoil it for Nick.
Okay.
Because we will get to her. But she's during the Lucy Miller era.
Oh.
She's like a companion that he has.
I always personally thought that Scott Pilgrim should have ended up with Lucy Miller. Cell 5.
Lucy Miller is like the greatest companion of all time.
Just for me.
And then Molly is from the Big Eyes. Big Eyes, right? Isn't that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Big Eyes, Brown Eyes. What is it? Dark Eyes? Dark Eyes. Yeah. That's the series that follows up the Lucy Miller seasons.
Oh, interesting.
It's called Doctor Who Dark Eyes, and then there's like Dark Eyes 1, Dark Eyes 2, Dark Eyes 3, Dark Eyes 4, and each one is a trilogy, and they all star Molly. And then since then he's had another series that's like that, that's like sequelized like that, and there's another companion. And then now they just announced that the follow-up to that is going to be called Doctor Who The Time War, which is going to be the beginnings of the Time War leading up to Night of the Doctor.
Interesting.
So,
well, I'm looking forward to understanding 100% of that.
You are going to love it, my friend. Love it.
I'm excited. You know what? Physician.
Fair enough. So I'm excited to be tackling those, but yeah, that'll be the last time that we talk about live action Paul McGann until like a million years from now, when we might eventually talk about Night of the Doctor. But that'll be a long way from now. But we will be talking about a lot of really, really great audio adventures between now and then.
Mm-hmm.
But next week we get to start talking about the Ninth Doctor for a very short amount of time.
I'm excited. I've seen this one before. I understood that reference.
Yeah. So next week we're going to be tackling Rose, the very first Ninth Doctor story, which will be a lot of fun. So yeah, we'll be back next week to talk about Rose.